Before this video starts, I do want to say that I don't hate Northwood, and there is no place in my heart where I do. I might dislike them for certain things, or have distastes for certain things they've done or directions they've gone in, but no hate. Keep in mind that I still think this product that Hubert has made and Northwood itself have good things to them that I myself think are genius and really like. This video is going to orientate around negative things about Northwood because, well, this video is supposed to be suggestions for Northwood and reasons why I quit the game.
There are a lot of things I want to talk about with Northwood, like problems, issues, and areas Northwood could improve in, that I want to talk about all in just one video. Here I'll be talking about them all, where I'll try to highlight the problem I see to the best of my ability and provide feedback and suggestions. This video is also meant to underline some of the reasons why I recently wanted to quit, which intertwine with some of the problems I've seen with Northwood. All of this being said, this video isn't intended to be something to get people to stop playing the game, not want to play the game, or put Northwood in any bad light. I have no malicious intentions with this video, and just want to give some suggestions, point out problems, and give insight as to why I wanted to quit. Don't let this video deter you from wanting to play SCP Secret Laboratory, just want to get that out there. Quick thing, other than the next two segments I'm going to be going over next, issues with the Plague House and the community, these segments go in no order of importance. Feel free to use the chapters I have provided in the description to fast forward to segments that sound most interesting or appealing to you. I do want to build off of some of the things I stated in the last video, which if you haven't watched, I'll summarize right now, and if you have watched, I would still recommend listening because I'll throw some extra details into the ring and go further into depth. Basically, I grew attached to this server in SCP Secret Laboratory, named the Plague House, and played on it so regularly that I joined its Discord server and became an admin. Sadly, many difficulties were brought upon this server. The lesser of the issues is every time SCP Secret Laboratory goes through an update, the server owner has to devote many hours contacting, emailing, and troubleshooting with his server provider to get the server back up. Each time, it takes days before the server gets back up, which each time negatively affects the server's player base. The bigger issue me and the server owner had was the server was delisted for what was said to be 3 weeks, but Northwood didn't do their job. And even after the 3 weeks had passed, the server's delist was unwarrantedly stretched out for an extra 18 days, where ultimately it wasn't even Northwood who got the server back up, but the server owner's server provider. During the whole situation, the server owner had contacted and emailed Northwood a total of 5 times, to which Northwood responded to none of said emails. The communication was completely one-sided. Not only was this just a huge hassle for the server owner, but this killed the server's player base. All of these issues continuously killed players who were finding our server and starting to like it, and were starting to cause players who were a part of the Discord server and had played on the server for a long time to start to get tired of the constant nature of the server being down and just stop playing on the server altogether. What really sucks is that this server used to peak at 20 players, which was the maximum amount of players that was allotted in the server. And because of a lot of these issues, our server has fallen into irrelevancy. Now, all of this was just repeatedly beating down my opinion on Northwood, because each update I would see every big popular server get immediately updated with no issues, while I knew the server owner at the Plague House was troubleshooting to get the server back up. I also know this was just really getting to the server owner and also making him start to dislike Northwood more and more. The message behind this is, well, I guess to do your job. And I feel like I have the right to say this when I have had first-hand experiences of somebody not doing their job, being the server wasn't put back up for 18 days past due what it was stated to be. This is a huge reason why I wanted to leave, possibly one of the biggest. My community being treated unrightfully with a D-list being extended for 18 days past due what was stated made me want to leave. I play this game for the game and the community, but when the community I become a part of gets treated unjust, I find it hard to enjoy the game. These people I have befriended playing this game, and it's also hard to play when my friends I've played with regularly do not want to play anymore because of these D-lists, as well as other things with Northwood. I hope to see servers not being treated unfairly and or people doing their jobs effectively to the point where a D-list isn't stretched out days past due, especially not 18 days. The community is definitely something I want to tap on and go over first, due to the fact that I have some messages for the community, and the likelihood you are a part of Northwood's community, I would say, is pretty high. Under every video that I see that doesn't speak in 100% of Northwood, I always see a comment of somebody who says, "Hey, cut 'em some slack," or "Stop criticizing Northwood, insert excuse." If you are somebody who does this, stop. You're causing more harm than good. There is such thing as good and constructive criticism that helps one point out to a developer that what they did is bad, both objectively and subjectively, and can be done better or just shouldn't be done. Receiving and listening to criticism is a common thing and can help shape and create a better future for a game to be more inclusive of the community's wants and also what is objectively good. Just because Northwood is made up of 14-year-old amateur game developers, someone else's words, not mine, or whatever excuse you want to give, doesn't mean that all problems with their games should be ignored and criticism shouldn't be given. The whole point of a lot of these videos and criticisms is to point out that something is bad so it can be changed, improved, or removed. We can only learn from our mistakes if we recognize their mistakes. So if you just keep silencing people who say they don't like these things, or people who point out problems, turning a blind eye and encouraging the community to do the same, the game developers won't recognize what they've done or been doing as a bad thing. And that's not helpful nor beneficial to neither Northwood nor the community. Preventing criticism will just cause Northwood to continue to do things that the community doesn't like, or never fix things they've done wrong. I want to address this too because I see it quite a bit as well. A lot of times under videos that don't speak in 100% support of Northwood or are to give criticism to Northwood, there's always a comment that labels the video as a hate video. Take this comment, for example, a comment under this video, which I do recommend, by the way. It's really good and I enjoyed watching it. This video is essentially, Northwood has many different UI styles. That's because many different people with many different envisions have worked on it at many different times. Northwood should get a singular person to redo all the UI so it matches more and looks less ugly and contrasting. There's more things he goes over, but that's the gist, and if you really want to know more, watch the video. But ultimately, the video is him showcasing a problem, explaining why it is a problem, and giving a solution as a suggestion. Nowhere in this video does this guy state or even remotely showcase he hates Northwood. Sure, at times he showcases some disliking towards what Northwood has done or is doing, but overall this guy makes a lot of excuses on Northwood's behalf, and he also states a couple of times in the video that he loves the game. Saying that this is a video that showcases hatred or is a hate video is a huge overstatement and just blatant lie. I also just think this statement is dumb. In most cases, you need to play a game to give an assessment on if you hate it or not. And I also find this comment very ironic and funny because this guy literally states in the first 6 seconds of this video,
Before I begin, I'd really like to thank you for listening what I have to say. You don't even know how I feel when someone leaves a comment I'm hating on the game for no reason, and then a video where I literally give the devs excuses if I did some work on the thing I was complaining about. But it's all fine.
So stop dismissing valid and good criticism as hate. The big thing here is that Northwood has a Patreon that if you subscribe to and pay $25 or $50 a month, you are then given the ability to play beta tests. Now, I have no issues with Northwood trying to gain money for the game they made, and in fact, I think a lot of things they're doing with their Patreon is smart, but I definitely have something against locking an entire beta where you give your player base the chance to play, critique, and bug test your work behind a $25 per month paywall. All the statistics you are going to hear were conducted on December 24th, 2023, at the time of script writing, using sources available to the public, which will be listed in the description right under the segment they belong to. They also only require one quick Google search if you don't want to click on any links, and if you want to check them out, feel free to. You can use the math that I did to get more modern results. The 24-hour peak of SCP Secret Laboratory's player base is stated to be 11,114, and the number of Patreon supporters is 701. Now, with these statistics I stated, this alone means that only 6.4% of people who play SCP Secret Laboratory have access to these betas, which immediately is already a pretty small number, which rounds out about to 1 out of every 17 people you see in SCP Secret Laboratory having access to these public betas. But that would be wrong. This is due to the fact that this has all been under the assumption that every single person subscribed to Northwood is paying for the $25 a month subscription, which is not true, as there are many more, a multitude of subscriptions. This means that only a fraction of the 701 Patreon supporters are able to access these betas. Now, I'm about to get a little mathematical here, so on screen will be a timestamp to skip past the math, where I just state a summarization, including a little bit of math. But if you don't want to listen to a bunch of math, you can go to this timestamp. But if you don't want it to just be source trust me bro, then keep watching. Since Northwood is making a $6,608 profit, I need to make a ratio of Patreon supporters who have access to these public betas and supporters who don't. To simplify things, I'm only going to take 2 subscriptions available, the $2 a month subscription and the $25 a month subscription. Just know that this scenario is extremely generous to the Patreon supporters with access to the betas due to the fact that I am using the cheapest subscription that has no access to betas, excluding the other subscriptions with no access to the betas, and the $50 a month subscription, all of which will make what I'm about to say and conduct more in favor of the Patreon supporters that have access to these betas. Doing the math, I was able to conduct a ratio of 475 to 226. That ratio means 475 $2 a month Patreon supporters and 226 $25 a month Patreon supporters, which totals to 701 Patreon supporters and a profit of $6,600. Just $8 short. Now that we have the generous number of 226 Patreon supporters with beta access, we find what percentage that is of the player base of SCP Secret Laboratory, 11,114, which ends up with just slightly above 2%. So in the end, that means in the most generous scenario I can give, that is quite frankly unrealistic, 2% of the SCP Secret Laboratory player base have access to betas. That is 1 out of every 50 people you will see when playing SCP Secret Laboratory, and keep in mind that realistically, the percentage would be even lower. All of this, and you still have to consider that the results of what people are going to think about an update and are going to say are going to be skewed, because you are quite frankly only having people who are willing to pay you $25 to $50 a month for how much they like your work, critique, and able to accurately test your work. This obviously sounds like, in return, you're going to get biased and skewed results of critique. I've also been made aware that people who are SCPSL partners are able to access these betas, at least from videos I can find, but I still feel skewed results still come into play for a lot of these SCPSL content creators, especially some who have their whole platform off of SCPSL. In the end, it would be way more beneficial to have these open to the public so you can get feedback from your community. There's a $2 support, which states you are given access to a suggestion channel in the official Discord, where your suggestions are guaranteed to see by a moderator. I find this strange because I don't know why you would want to lock your ability to receive feedback and suggestions behind a paywall. I understand why you can't have a section in the Discord open to the public where people can provide suggestions and feedback. I guess I just find it weird that you have to pay them to give them a suggestion. Like, if anything, you should be paying people for suggestions. I'm sure the main selling point of the $2 support is not that you are given access to a channel that allows you to give some suggestions, but at the end of the day, the only way to be able to give suggestions is to pay $2 a month or more. Now, I think the Patreon is a really good idea, and I support it. Not financially, I just support the idea. I think it's a good way to get funding while providing a free game. Everything but the two things I stated are really good choices and perks they are giving people, and replace the previous problems I've stated with the Patreon. In short, there is room for Northwood to not have these additions to their Patreon, and ultimately restricting the amount of people who can give you suggestions and criticism on your updates isn't a good idea, and is harming Northwood at the end of the day. Version 13.2.0, an update that strived to fix SCP-939 and make her more balanced, was redone 6 days later due to how badly it was executed. This update immediately backfired. Scrolling through SCP Secret Laboratory's entire update wiki, I cannot find another update that had to be redone within such a short period of time due to such an intense urgency. Now, look, I know sometimes people screw up, and you think people are going to like an update and they end up not liking it, but it's a little worrying to know that an update that was so poorly executed to the point where it was urgent enough to redo it within 6 days had managed to bypass all levels of security and overview and be released to the public. And it's not like the problem was hidden and something that could have been easily glossed over on review. The realization of how bad SCP-939 was made was recognized almost immediately by the community. To me, this just speaks that Northwood didn't even do any testing or checking to make sure the nerfing they were doing to the SCP was actually good. Because for me personally, it only took less than a minute of playing as SCP-939 in some action to see how harshly SCP-939 was nerfed. My first time playing as SCP-939, I put the slider to the bottom to never have to play her again. It wasn't something that I had to analyze or really even consider thinking about. It was just immediate bam. The movement speeds were just awful, and the range was broken in a bad way.
Bro, my game, I hit Bob once, my game freezes. What is this? What is this?
Are you good?
With all of this said, I refuse to believe that Northwood spent more than 10 seconds testing SCP-939, because that's really all the playtime you needed to do to experience how poorly and harshly she was nerfed. The weaponry update was a teased update where really the only thing that is relevant to this point I am making is in the update the micro HID was going to get a rework. Anyway, in this micro HID rework, the goal was to upgrade the micro HID and make it more powerful because to a lot of people it had fallen behind and became incapable of handling modern SCPs. One of the most notable things was the micro-HID's change from the original 6.3 meters to 15 meters, a change that almost tripled the original range. Now, of course, I'm sure it can sound absurd at first, but alone isn't enough of a reason to say that Northwood didn't put much thought behind the update. So I'll explain. Everything within the following charts I will show has been conducted using the official SCPSL wiki and some game knowledge. This is a chart that I made to compare each SCP's attack range to the micro-HID's range, as well as showcasing the micro-HID's old range. With these variables alone, it looks like every SCP is in for a tough time, except for SCP-173, who is the only competitor. Also, the top bar for SCP-173 is SCP-173's breaking neck speed engaged, and the bottom is the one without the breaking neck speed. So with this chart alone, we can see that SCP-106 and SCP-049 and SCP-939 are very pathetic compared to the micro-HID and fall at 1/15th of the range of the micro-HID. But all of the information really comes clear when we start to compare both this chart and the speed of the player versus SCPs. Alright, a couple things to go over here. First off, all of these are calculated at meters per second because that's how it's stated in the wiki. At the very bottom, we see 3 bars. The very bottom one is SCP-049's normal movement speed. The one above that is SCP-106's movement speed, and the top one is SCP-049's movement speed with his speed ability activated. In SCP-173's category, the very bottom bar is SCP-173's movement speed when being ignored, and the bar above that is SCP-173's speed when not being observed. The bar above that is SCP-173's speed when being observed with his ability engaged, and the top bar is SCP-173 not being observed with his ability engaged. At the very top, the bars that are a darker coloration are colas. The darker the coloration and the further to the right, the more colas. And for the player, which is showcased by the micro-HID, SCP-096 and SCP-939, the top bar is the SCP Sprint, and the bottom bar is the SCP's Walk. SCP-096 is calculating docile movement speed and enraged movement speed only. Alright, with all that stated, let's point out a couple of things. I'm sure you can see the vertical bar in the middle of the graph. This represents the threshold that needs to be passed for an SCP to be able to outrun the player without taking into account that the player has SCP-207s. Taking SCP and SCP-106 as an example, you can see that both run below the player's movement speed. This means that in battle, the SCPs will fail to evade and pursue the player. The player will be faster, so when the SCP moves towards the player can move away, and when the SCP tries to flee, the player can pursue the SCP. Combine this with a window of 14 meters where you can attack the SCP, but the SCP can attack you, and you can see that SCP-049 and SCP-106 are going to get completely smoked by the micro-HID and stands 0 chance if they cannot use their ability. I'll state that with SCP-106's abilities, the micro-HID just completely fails and is denied. SCP-173 obviously has a tougher time without the ability, because let's be frank, you are going to be able to keep your eyes on SCP-173. So as long as you can keep your distance from SCP-173, there is a window of 7 meters where SCP-173 cannot attack you, but you can attack SCP-173. And this chart just gets harder with the cola. Well, really almost immediately I knew this was going to be broken, but it only took me 1 minute to figure out how screwed SCP-106 and SCP-049 would be just by looking at the wiki. It took me 2 minutes to create the range sheet and 8 minutes to create the movement sheet. So it didn't really take much time for me, as a singular person, to come up with these results of how absurd the range is. So it's worrying that this got passed by so many people to the point where it was published to devlogs. The only excuse I can think to give this is that the 15 meters is a placeholder, which first off doesn't excuse how absurdly long it is. A placeholder of 8 to 10 meters would sound more appropriate, it being a placeholder of 15 meters doesn't really excuse the absurdness for me. Second off, people are still defending it, saying that 15 meters is a good idea. So me explaining right now why it isn't necessarily a bad thing. One last thing I would like to provide is the damage charts, which show a little bit of a worrying truth. To describe what you are seeing, the red blocks are an SCP's health, and the blue blocks are an SCP's Hume. Each column represents the amount of time it takes the SCP to be killed, the first one being 1 second, the second being 2 seconds, and so on. Above these columns, you'll be able to see cyan blue nudges with the cyan text, and those are the old columns for the old micro HID. The white represents the new micro HID. Now, from what before would take SCP-173 down to about 1250 HP before they could teleport, giving them some chance to defend themselves, has turned into 250 HP before they could teleport, with SCP-173 having a 0.2 reaction time where they need to teleport, and if they don't, they die. I won't really comment on this much. You can see that all SCPs have lost a second or greater of how much time of direct fire of a micro HID they can survive, which, whether you see that as fit, is up to you. You can conduct with this what you want to conduct. My main concern with this is SCP-173 is only given a 0.2 second window and reaction time to survive the micro HID once it has begun firing. The message behind this is to just put some consideration into what you're doing. I mean, this all gives off the impression that Northwood just kind of does stuff blindly, not putting much thought behind what they're doing. I would really hope that Northwood isn't just putting random numbers that sound good and announcing their changes as if they're official without doing any testing. And this isn't to excuse where Northwood has put thought behind their updates, but to highlight where I presume they haven't. So the tease update I was just talking about was made when a lot of people started complaining that the micro HID had fallen behind and was not fit to handle the modern SCPs. And in the logs, it literally stated that this is one of the intentions behind the update. And yet, this update didn't do that. The update arguably did quite the opposite, removing gray area scenarios, making everything black and white. So if SCP-106 or SCP-049 does not have their ability, it's just not even worth trying to survive for them. But if SCP-106 has his sinkhole ability, he can just completely deny a good micro HID use without any difficulty or skill required. SCP-939 can still leap. Their leap is just limited to having to be done in a little foxhole. And if not leaping in a foxhole, SCP-173's leap is just going to fall flat and get themselves killed. While a good leap is still guaranteeing the denial of a good micro HID use. SCP-173 without the ability is screwed. SCP-173 with the ability isn't screwed and has the easiest time evading. This is a reason why I wanted to leave, for sure. Updates like these show little to no thought, or at least appear to be, when me as a singular person spending a couple of minutes sees how bad these changes are, but a company of people doesn't. I hope to see updates that show thought and careful decision making in each and every update. This isn't to excuse where Northwood has shown careful decision making, but to highlight where they haven't. Something I, as well as many other people have noticed, is Northwood's favoritism towards the genre of their game, that is FPS, which comes with neglection of other areas, such as another top genre of the game, horror. I'll start off with just showing how many times Northwood has expanded upon their FPS since Parabellum, and how many times they've expanded upon horror since Parabellum. And to quickly note, these will include updates that might not have had the initial intention of expanding upon FPS, but still effectively did. I am not labeling all of these updates as solely being to expand upon FPS, with the intention to solely expand upon the FPS, although some are. Some of these updates indirectly affect the FPS, and I am acknowledging that. Since Parabellum, the FPS expansions Northwood have created have been the addition of SCP-1853, reworking SCP-1853 twice, shortening of the grenade fuse, the addition of the FRMG-0, lighting rework, the addition of the particle disruptor, the addition of the jailbird changes, the addition of the A7, the addition of the COM-45, flashbang hit marks, 2 shotgun improvements and reworks, teased changes for the micro HID, teased changes for the particle disruptor, teased changes for the new specialty weapon lockers, and teased changes adding an SCP that will let you see players through walls. All of these changes come out to 18 expansions upon the FPS of the game, which might not be all of them, but the only things I could find listed on the wiki and stuff I remember. Next is every horror expansion since Parabellum, which Northwood has created. A noise and visual to play when you view SCP-096's face, the traumatized effect with SCP-106, and SCP-939's leap. All of these changes add up to 3 expansions upon the horror, which might not be all of them, but the only things I could find listed on the wiki and stuff I remember. If I missed anything from either one of these that you want to point out, feel free to tell me in the comments. I'm open to have glossed over something and being wrong. With all of this, the ratio of updates that expanded upon FPS and the updates that expanded upon horror are 18-3, or 6-1, meaning that for every time they've expanded upon the horror of their game since Parabellum, they've expanded upon the FPS of their game 6 times. But the frequency is also something to keep in mind, realizing that almost every update there has been some sort of element that has expanded upon FPS, and only few that touch on horror. There is also the fact that Northwood quite literally made the lighting update, which just completely killed a lot of atmosphere in the facility due to making everything so bright. Heavy has no corner left untouched by light, with the light being a bright piss yellow. A lot of textures also now appear flat and dull, not popping out like they used to. All of this sacrificed atmosphere and immersion just so you could see better and not get distracted by your surroundings. Now that everything is flat and doesn't pop, it doesn't take away from the FPS of the game. I know there is a better way that this could have been executed better to where visually the game would still look immersive and the game kept its atmosphere while also becoming brighter so it's easier for people to see. And look, I have no problem with expanding upon the FPS. I also think it's very hard not to, since it's such a big part of SCP Secret Laboratory and also something that is keeping it different from other games. I also do like the fact that they added onto the FPS, but I think there has been neglection in other top genres of SPSL. And there is a reason I really don't appreciate how Northwood has just been abandoning the horror part of the game. When I started playing this game used to be what I would consider Lethal Company to be right now. A game that very intelligently mashed together fun and horror to create a game that was cohesive in both being a really funny game and fun game, as well as a scary game. This game perfectly put together elements to where you could be having a really fun time without the horror overriding it, but at the same time you could play the game in a way that would give you a horrifying experience. Over the years, additions to this game, aspects that have been removed, and a lack of additions have just killed a lot of this horror that the game used to have. I wanted to say this because I want to show that I'm not complaining just to complain, but because SCP-173 used to have this magical thing that they have just stopped trying to maintain with these updates. Ultimately, since they've expanded upon the FPS of the game so much and horror so little, with even moments where they got rid of horror, this game just doesn't have that fun horror blend it used to. This is a reason why I wanted to leave. Like I provided, this game has lost one of its unique properties that made it so intriguing to me. I hope to see more horror added to this game and a stop of its neglection so the game maintains the once horror fun blend it had. And if not, maybe that's not the direction Northwood wants to take their game anymore. I hope this game stops being, or never is, solely fueled by FPS and to hold some other unique factors, such as the horror, but, something else. Now, I want to start this off by saying Northwood still does a lot of amazing updates, and I'm not trying to take away from this. But at the end of the day, I do think it is a genuine issue when this company would rather spend their time and resources creating a joke item that can only be obtained using this one machine, in this one room, in this one zone that is only available for the first 15 minutes of the game, with the machine only having a chance of giving you said joke item, instead of fixing or addressing big problems with their game. The Surface update, an update Northwood promised that would change the boring, empty, and bleak surface that we all know into something more flavorful and enjoyable, was never completed. Instead of that, they made this beautiful fog from SCP-244 into this bloody trash. Okay, obviously I don't care that much about the change, but I hope everyone sees where I'm coming from. Northwood should be devoting some amount of time into creating big updates that fix big problems with the game, because at the end of the day they will be way worth it and beneficial. Well, why don't I put my money where my mouth is? What are some suggestions / updates I have for Northwood that they should be spending their time on? Optimization. Redesigning nuke-room so it isn't as easily campable. The nuke-room is designed almost as if the developers wanted to make the room as campable as possible. The campers have windows that allow them to peek out and shoot, as well as hide behind for cover. There is a room behind that has a door for cover of gunfire and has utilities such as grenades, ammunition, and guns, as well as possible throwables. This is while perpetrators have to exit a small elevator door, serving as a funnel for the campers to easily shoot at. Perpetrators also have to run along a long path that provides no cover for gunfire before they can reach the campers. The elevator provides little protection to gunfire and no protection to grenades. While I think it is a fun circumstance to be holding the nuke room, I feel the odds are unfairly warranted to the camper until they run out of supplies, which they usually never do, as each person coming to kill them just functions as a supply crate. I think there needs to be something to a little more fairly put some odds into the perpetrator. More horror. Like I've already stated, this game could go with some updates expanding upon the horror, so it isn't overridden by everything else in the game. I've made a series of possible things to make the game hold more horror elements or be more action-packed to have an unnerving feel, so you can look for some of my ideas. A lot of it's background stuff and a lot of it's foreground stuff, so there's a bunch of different ideas that you, as well as in Northwood, could take better atmosphere. Something that this game doesn't have is a lot of immersion, especially due to the fact that the lighting update made all the textures flat and repetitive, contrasting when they used to pop and felt more three-dimensional. Now, Northwood did take a step to one-up the atmosphere they had by changing the door sounds, but I actually think in many ways these changes were bad. I don't mind most of the regular doors, but the sounds of gates and checkpoints are obnoxious and not easy to tune out. What I love about the old ones was that they were easy to ignore when needed, but when paying attention stuck out like a sore thumb. Now, paying attention or not, you will hear them, which I dislike. Although, these changes ultimately will be an insignificant step in the right direction if Northwood doesn't continue to build on to it or add anything else. Still, a step in the right direction, which I applaud Northwood for. Surface update. The surface is dull, boring, and also a containment breach asset. Anything to spice it up, give it more content, more flavor, would be better than what we have now, giving facility guards a clear objective. Well, let's start this off by saying that facility guards were created with no thought of who would be playing the class. The sole purpose of the creation of the facility guards was to be something else for the SCPs to kill other than D-Class and scientists, and also so the D-Class didn't have an easy direct shot towards the surface. And I think that really shows. D-Class spawn and immediately know they need to get loop, get a keycard, and escape. Same thing for scientists. Military classes need to kill the opposing team, aid their team in escaping, and kill the SCPs. This leaves the facility guard, which just kind of has to wander around until they're given something to do, like assist a scientist escaping, terminating a D-Class, or attacking an SCP. Another thing to note is the objectives of every class except Facility Guard always have an end goal, such as D-Class. Their end goal is to escape. Now, as a D-Class, you can take 40 minutes to escape. You can do whatever you want as long as you get to that one goal. The same thing goes for military. You have a couple of side quests, but your main goal is to kill SCPs and get rid of any malicious forces in the facility, taking control of it, such as Chaos and D-Class. That is your main goal. Anywhere to get to there is fine. Now, this goes to facility guards where it's just a bunch of side quests. There is no end goal, which is the lack of purpose that they have. Fixing SCP-096. I've already made videos about this, but let's just say SCP-096 isn't properly given his role in the SCP team. SCP-096 is built from the ground up to be able to handle multiple people, but then the numbers are put in, so SCP-096 is punished harshly when he tries to attack players the few opportunities he is given. Fixing the FRMG-0. Well, I think there are plenty of videos on this, but I have my own separate problem. Where I personally think the FRMG gets overpowered is its versatility. I'll explain it by comparing it to the Logicer. The Logicer is balanced in the way that with its attachments, you can only accomplish one of two things. A gun that is very fit for long ranges, but not close ranges, or a gun that is the opposite, fit for close ranges, but not for long ranges. This makes sense due to the fact that the Logicer would be pretty overpowered to be a gun that does it all. It has fast fire rate, lots of damage, and this would just add another thing, which is you can shoot from a very generous window of ranges. Now you have the FRMG-0. The same idea, but with the FRMG-0, you are able to make a build that supports both long and short ranges. Now, this is due to the fact that, to stay in theme with the MTF's guns, Northwood decided to give the gun a load of attachments and customizability, which can widely modify the gun, which I just think for this large machine gun shouldn't be the case. I think you should be very limited in what you can do with it, especially for a machine gun. This versatility makes it so the gun has everything: the damage, the fire rate, the ammo capacity, the range. It removes the need for other guns because there are really no weaknesses you need to cover up except for the fact that it's not an insta-kill. More animations. Now, this is a personal thing that I desire and haven't heard anybody else request, but definitely think would add another level of strategy and immersion into the game. Animations that sync up for other players, such as getting ready to throw an item, SCP-018 grenade or flashbang, inspecting weapons, drawing and reloading weapons. They have those, but they can be improved. They aren't exactly the best. Equipping the hat, and really just any interaction with any item. When I say sync up, I mean that a lot of animations are only visual for the player using the item, like pulling the pin to a grenade, and they should add an animation to the player model so other players can visually see the other player interacting with the item. Better balancing. More on this later, and I think this is also kind of just obvious. Make a tutorial. An in-game tutorial for the game that provides basic necessities players need to understand to be able to play the game, as well as the function of SCP items would be beneficial and helpful to Northwood's player base. It would also increase it, because I know a lot of people leave because they just don't understand what they're doing, and there's no tutorial, except an outdated one in Polish. Making the operational guide an actual guide. Naming it the operational guide leads me to believe it is supposed to be a manual that the player can look to when they are confused with mechanics of the game, which will help inform the player of something's mechanic or purpose. Yet, this isn't what the operational guide is, instead being a book of lore. If the purpose of the operational guide is to just be a book of lore, then I guess the developers succeed. But in that case, I would suggest renaming it so it isn't as confusing to new players, making the operational guide accessible to in-game spectators. A great way to kill a spectator's time as a new player would be to be able to read the operational guide and consume information on how the game functions and mechanics of certain things. Of course, if the developers just actually want the operational guide to not be a guide, adding it to the spectator menu will still prove to be beneficial if people want to kill spectator time at reading up on it. Winning conditions. I do think it is a genuine problem worth addressing when it is a completely valid and executable strategy to spend the first 15 minutes of the game camping in Night 14, upgrading items more and more, completely avoiding any conflict and level of difficulty, all to just be able to, at the end of the game, come out on top and kill everybody. If there is no SCP-079 or SCP-106, the SCPs are incapable of doing anything. Anyways, I listed 14 things that would probably take a lot of work and dedication, but in the end would be worth it for the end result. Of course, there are definitely more things that Northwood can do. If you have any ideas, feel free to comment them. These are just the only ones I thought of as of now. And I just want to state this because I might have been a little misleading with this, but the joke items are not the thing I am complaining about. I could care less if Northwood decided every update that they wanted to add a joke item. What I care about is that Northwood is not spending their time, or some of their time, making these really good updates, or fixing these problems that have been asked for by the community. The fact that Northwood is spending some of their time to create these joke items instead of these really good updates is just kind of salt in the wounds, no matter how minuscule they are. And at the end of the day, how often do you even see SCP-207 or the A7 even being obtained, excluding modded servers, admins, and the Christmas tree? I've never seen these things beyond 2 days after release from just people who wanted to test them out. Nobody actually uses them, which again, wouldn't care if there was some time being devoted into these big things. What I ask is that Northwood just not avoid these issues, because to me it seems their avoidance of them is pretty blatant, especially when instead of trying to fix SCP-096, every update they just decide to shift numbers hoping SCP-096 will finally not be broken. Even just to an extent addressing these issues would be better than just doing nothing and leaving us in the dark. At least I feel. This is a reason I wanted to leave. I do not like the prominent laziness of avoiding issues with their game, like the surface being a containment breach asset, and other things. Northwood is starting to do more and more updates, and increasing frequency more and more, which isn't a bad thing, don't get me wrong. It scares me that Northwood is going to start creating more problems that they're just going to brush over like they commonly do, leaving them to pile up. And I'm not leaving because I'm scared, by the way. I'm not trying to be misleading with that. I'm just leaving because avoiding issues. I hope to see Northwood look back over what they have looked past and fix problems with their game or revamp things so they stop being a problem. I also hope Northwood, in the future, maintains fixing problems with their game. Now, I want to take this chance to talk about the removal of the private keycard. To many, it was a confusing and unnecessary move, because to many, they weren't experiencing the issue that the few who were complaining about it were. So, to those who don't know, you may ask, why was it removed? And I'll tell you. It was because of two very avoidable and rare case scenario skill issues. Some people would be tabbed out of their game, resulting in them getting locked on surface. In other scenarios, people would run to Gate A but not have a keycard to enter the facility, getting trapped on surface. Both of these issues are completely avoidable. First off, complaining that a multiplayer game progressed without you when you were AFK is such a bizarre thing to me. I don't understand how you could blame the game and not yourself when you were literally tabbed out. This problem isn't going to occur if you're not tabbed out, so just actually play the game? My bad, G's. Second off, why would you go separately to a gate that nobody is going to if you don't have a keycard to open that gate? Just don't do that. Problem solved. The main issue I have with this update was that it was a change in a 5-year-old solidified rule and a disrespect of lore just to appeal to a part of the community who was having this very avoidable rare case skill issue. Why is this disrespectful to lore? Well, the SCP Foundation in lore is a very organized, foundation. They have a built-in hierarchy that is built off of loyalty, trust, and skill. A captain is the highest authority to the MTF, and this is because they are the most trusted by the Foundation and skilled. Because such, they have the highest authority, access, and utilities. A private is not yet trusted enough to enter the facility and is used as a pawn. Privates serve as firepower to the facility, thus why they don't have access to it. Chaos does not have this hierarchy. You can just join their team and be accepted to have the same level of authority and firepower as everyone else. This helps Chaos be more of a threat, because each individual class holds the same amount of power. But there is also no guidance. Nobody holds a higher authority over anyone, causing them to be less organized. Private to have the same level of authority as a sergeant just waters down each class as only having a difference in utility, which isn't true. These classes are supposed to be as well divisible by authority, but are not being treated in such a way. Again, the issue that I have with this is that Northwood released an update that changed a piece of their game that was not complained about for 5 years, pushing aside a valuable part of lore that is used in their game to create a dynamic between Chaos and MTF to accommodate for a couple of people's very avoidable, rare case scenario skill issues. This is a reason why I wanted to quit. It saddens me to see Northwood appeal to this part of the community and reinforce this thought that it is not a skill issue on the player, but a problem with the game. I hope to see Northwood stand their ground and not deter from the original or current intention of their game, especially when it's to change a 5-year-old solidified aspect of their game since release to all of a sudden appeal to people who now find it a problem. SCPs is just a whole other chapter in the book of SCP Secret Laboratory. There would be so much to discuss, so much to state, that it genuinely would need its own video to address, and I'm not willing to address it in its entirety in this video. I will, however, provide some details. SCPs do not fit the role that they are supposed to. SCPs are supposed to be this class that goes against everything but themselves. In this game, SCPs are monsters. Monsters contained within a highly protected facility that holds the most dangerous of anomalies. With this setup, it would be expected that these monstrous creatures hold some sort of powerful strengths. It would be assumed in most cases when these SCPs breach containment, they are hunters, while in rare cases where a big enough defense or offense is built, the SCPs become the hunted. Yet, in experiences both as and not as SCPs, 9 times out of 10, SCPs are the ones being hunted. This even stretches to just 1v1s, where human classes have easy times evading and even killing SCPs, or at least doing a significant amount of damage before the SCP can catch up. What I expect to be the reason is because SCPs have been made weaker in some areas. 2 taps. There's probably other stuff too. But a lot of progression in this game has been made to give human classes more items to use. More weapons are and have been added, weapons have and are being reworked into stronger things, and more items are and have been added for human players to use to make them more powerful. In a lot of cases, it's easy to see a singular person have enough gear to equate or even become more powerful than SCPs. The amount of one-man armies there is now and things of that nature is astonishing. It's become such a prone strategy for me to come across, and that's because it's so effective. This leads into another issue I have, which is just SCPs aren't feared anymore. At least not to the same extent they once were. The amount of times I see SCPs being bomb rushed without care, or people going in alone, is not a small amount. People used to actually fear going against the SCPs, or at least strategize them and didn't just bomb rush them without care. Sadly, now we have people running at them alone because of the absurd loot they've cooked up in 914. As a player who has played this game since the beginning of 2022, I have watched the amount of times SCPs win decrease. I have watched the amount of times SCPs are the ones chasing people decrease. I only ever see people being chased early game, if that. And it's so extraordinarily rare to see people being chased by SCPs late game. With this, you can just not tell me that in recent times it hasn't been an objective to weaken or change SCPs so that they don't win as regularly. In the end, I think SCPs are just less of a threat than they once were. This might be due to changes with SCPs making them ultimately weaker. This might have to do with more updates contributing to reworking and expanding upon human players, or it might have to do with a mix of both. At the end of the day, I feel SCPs are weaker compared to when I started playing, and I know a lot of people who can agree. I also want to clarify, I am mostly talking about individual SCPs. I don't care about SCPs working together right now. I am talking about individual SCPs. There are also just a lot of disagreements that come with SCPs, like how they should be balanced. Some people think that SCPs should be balanced only thinking of how effective the SCP will be alone, and others think SCPs should be balanced mostly with the thought of having aid from other SCPs so as not to have a full SCP team being too overpowered. Both come with pros and cons, and boils down to what you find more acceptable and accurate. I personally think the first answer choice I provided, SCPs should be balanced only thinking of how the SCPs will be when alone, is the best, and I'll explain why. The second choice comes with the thought that the full SCP team is too overpowerful, too scary, but that's the whole point of an SCP team. People complained that a whole SCP team together was too overpowering and too overwhelming, which it was, but that came at a cost. The cost was that the SCPs controlled less of the facility and covered less ground. There was always a way to sneak around them, some other place to go. This would require the SCPs to keep moving. Also, a full SCP team together wasn't invincible. Slowly, their health degraded. I don't like this idea of forcing SCPs to have to work together to be a level of strength they should be alone. First of all, that limits strategy, being knowing when to split up and when to work together, and second of all, what's the point of being an SCP then? The whole point is that you're a marauder and supposed to go against the entire facility, and you can't even give them the tools to do so unless they constantly follow their teammates. It just doesn't fit what an SCP is supposed to be. Anyways, there is a lot more to say, more to state, but we'll be here forever with what I want to provide, so I'll end it off here. This is the last segment, and I just want to ask one last question. Is this a pageant project? Now, I know that might sound dumb at first. Yes, of course it is. But I wanted to talk about a couple of things that would lead one to believe it isn't. First off, let's start off with some things that would suggest that this is a passion project. Hubert originally created this as a sole developer without the thought or intention the game would gain this much popularity. Northwood doesn't really care to fix some problems with their game, and some of their updates are just to do whatever they want to do. An example of this being, Northwood has not redesigned the surface zone yet, a change that was very requested by Northwood's community and Northwood itself addressed, but instead they have added joke items that nobody uses. And lastly, Northwood has some people in their company who just don't do their job. Whether it be somebody who is supposed to be monitoring servers who doesn't delist and relist servers on time, or someone who is a developer for the game and says they can't do anything about it when somebody reports that a mechanic of their game isn't functioning correctly.
CJ Blasts, a good friend of mine, he wanted to report a bug where the flashbang just always showed a hit marker even if it hit nothing, which is funny because that was the only useful change they added and even that didn't work properly. And the guy whose job it is to take bug reports and show them to the devs at first claimed that it was a new addition and not a bug. So we thought he misunderstood us, common mistake, whatever. So we said, no, you see, it goes off even if it hit nothing. And his next words were, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? You work at Northwood. CJ continued to try and explain it, only for him to say, not much I can do about it. Like what? It's your job. The fuck do you mean? What do you mean you can't do anything about it? It's your job.
This all gives off the impression that Northwood is just doing whatever they want with their game because it's a passion project, and they treat it no greater, and hold it to no greater standard. But what are some things that would suggest otherwise? What is suggesting that this isn't a passion project? Well, first off, Northwood with their Mimicry update removed signature and unique things from their game, such as an RGB tear from the grenades, as well as removing the blooms from light sources. These were all changed to more modern effects. Secondly, Northwood changed some achievements from being a funny little reward to achieved after you die accidentally, being new to the game, into something that just feels less rewarding. They also changed the funny, easygoing names they had for achievements into these corporate, serious names. Lastly, they literally made a company. Need I say more? These updates give off the impression that Northwood is treating their game seriously and holding it to a standard higher than just a passion project. Now, at the end of the day, yes, I know this is a passion project. I just think it's a shame that Northwood starts to take themselves seriously in specific areas like achievements, changing achievements that are rewarded from dying in funny ways to achievements that are rewarded from doing menial tasks, and some that are just weird. And in addition, changing easygoing funny names to more serious ones. But they don't take themselves seriously when there are big problems with their game worth addressing, and they would instead rather add a joke item that nobody is going to use. And also the fact that some people in the company just don't do their job, which I feel like I have the right to say from experiences I've seen and experiences I've experienced firsthand. Yes, this is a reason why I wanted to quit. The death achievements used to give off the vibe that this game was funny and not meant to be taken seriously. Taking that away and making these achievements weird, all in the name of being more corporate, yet not really treating themselves corporate with other stuff they arguably should be, I just don't like it. I hope to see Northwood re-implement the funny, easygoing achievements, but also to take themselves seriously in places they should be taking themselves seriously, like fixing problems with their game. Now, I hope I effectively stated some of my concerns and distastes for this game, as well as provided some valuable suggestions for Northwood to use. At the end of the day, I am grateful for the friends I have gained from this experience and the communities I have become a part of, and truly appreciate the experiences I've had with this game. Let it be known that I have no hate for Northwood. There is distaste, discomfort, and lack of support for certain directions Northwood is going in and decisions Northwood is making, but no hate. I wish the best for this game and hope to see it do well and fix itself.
Now, I want to say when I recorded the audio for this initially, I actually changed the very end of the script to remove me from promising future involvement of this game, as I actually did want to quit, even after I decided not to. From what I was receiving, I was holding on to something that just wasn't there, and I thought I should finally let go. As of until recently, good and promising things have been happening with the Plaguehouse, and it seems it might have a bright future. So as long as the server is in session, or Northwood doesn't do a bizarrely bad change, I'm proud to announce future involvement with Northwood. I hope to continue to try and provide ideas and solutions for the game, as well as point out problems a lot of people are turning a blind eye to. See you soon, and hope you have a nice day.